Hi friends, today let's talk about time. How long do we have before snack break? When is lunch? Which day do we have art class? So many things revolve around date and time. We tell the time so that we know what all events happen through the day. When we start our day, we need to wake up on time and get ready so that we are not late for school, isn't it? Hence, we need to learn to read a clock so that we can plan our day well. We will start with a discussion on the analog clock first. Now, this is the face of an analog clock. The clock shows numbers from 1 to 12. On a clock, time is divided into minutes and hours and sometimes seconds. The numbers on the clock represent the hours. Now, these are the clock hands. Don't confuse these with the hands with which we eat our food. One hand is short and the other hand is long. The longer hand is the minute hand and the shorter hand designates the hour. The hour hand tells us what hour it is. It points to the number that the time is or the hour that is most recently passed. Notice that as the minute hand moves, the hour hand also moves, but at a slower rate. The hands move around in one single direction all the time. We call this clockwise direction. The minute hand goes around one time each minute. And guess for 1 hour, how many times does the minute hand move? It moves 60 times. That's interesting. Similarly, for 1 minute, the second hand moves 60 times as well. So, the second hand also moves one time each second. Now, let's check what time is shown in the analog clock with a few examples. Shall we? Whenever the minute hand points to 12, we say o'clock. With the minute hand pointing to 12, we check which number is the hour hand pointing to. Let's say number 9. We say the time is 9 o'clock. So, with the minute hand on 12, if the hour hand is on 1, it will be 1 o'clock. With the hour hand on 2, time will be 2 o'clock and so on. That's cool. But when the minute hand, the bigger hand, touches 6, then we say half past. With the minute hand pointing to 6, we check which number is the hour hand pointing to. Let's say number 12. We say the time is half past 12. That's cool. So, with the minute hand on 6, if the hour hand is after 1, it will be half past 1. With the hour hand after 2, time will be half past 2 and so on. Next, let's look at this clock. As you can see, it has been divided into 4 equal sections. Let's read the clock in a little bit more detail with few more examples. Are you ready? Let's get started. When the minute hand moves 1/4 of the way, we call it quarter past the hour. Here, the minute hand points to the number 3. With the minute hand pointing to 3, we check which number is the hour hand pointing to. Let's say number 5. We say the time is quarter past 5. With the minute hand on 3, if the hour hand is pointing to 1, it will be quarter past 1. With the hour hand pointing to 2, time will be quarter past 2. Now, when the minute hand moves through one more section and points to number 6, we call it half past the hour. The hour hand points to. We all know this, isn't it? Next, let us find out the time that shows on the clock when the minute hand moves through one more section and points to number 9. In this case, we call it quarter to the hour. Here, the minute hand points to the number 9. With the minute hand pointing to 9, we check which number is the hour hand pointing to or is close to. Let's say number 7. We say the time is quarter to 7. So, with the minute hand on 9, if the hour hand is close to 1, it will be quarter to 1. With the hour hand close to 2, time will be quarter to 2 and so on. That's interesting. To count time, we count by 5 for the numbers 1 to 12. So, the minute hand on 12 is mapped to the number 0. When the minute hand is on 1, the corresponding number is 5. This means that 5 minutes has passed since the time the minute hand was at the number 12. Minute hand on 2 is mapped to the number 10. This means that 10 minutes has passed since the time the minute hand was at the number 12. Similarly, minute hand on 3 is mapped to number 15. Minute hand on 4 is mapped to number 20. Minute hand on 5 is mapped to number 25. Minute hand on 6 is mapped to number 30. Minute hand on 7 is mapped to number 35. Minute hand on 8 is mapped to number 40. Minute hand on 9 is mapped to number 45. Minute hand on 10 is mapped to number 50. Minute hand on 11 is mapped to number 55. That's really interesting, isn't it? Now, let's learn to read the clock with a few more examples. In this example, where do you think the hour hand is pointing to? It is pointing to 6. In fact, it is not exactly on 6 but has moved slightly further from 6. And where is the minute hand pointing to? The minute hand is pointing to 3. Hope you remember the rule that to count time, we count by 5 for the numbers 1 to 12. So, with the minute hand on 3, how many minutes do you think it is? 15 minutes, isn't it? So the time must be 6:15. That means it is 6:15 on a digital clock, right? This means we are 15 minutes past 6. We can also say that the time is 6:15. Let's move on to the next example. Where do you think the hour hand is pointing to? It is pointing to 8. In fact, it is not exactly on 8 but is moved slightly further from 8. And where is the minute hand pointing to? The minute hand is pointing to 5. Hope you remember the rule that to count time, we count by 5 for the numbers 1 to 12. So, when the minute hand is on 1, it corresponds to 5 minutes. When the minute hand is on 2, it is mapped to 10 minutes, 3, 15 minutes, 4, 20 minutes, and 5 should be 25 minutes. So, with a minute hand on 5, how many minutes do you think it is? 25 minutes. That's right. So, the time is 8:25. This means we are 25 minutes past 8. We can also say that it is 8:25 on a digital clock. Awesome. In the next example, where do you think the hour hand is pointing to? It is pointing to 8. In fact, it is not exactly on 8 but is moved slightly further away from 8. And where is the minute hand pointing to? The minute hand is pointing to 9. Hope you remember the rule that to count time, we count by 5 for the numbers 1 to 12. So, when the minute hand is on 1, it corresponds to 5 minutes. Minute hand on 2 corresponds to 10 minutes. 3, 15 minutes, 4, 20 minutes, 5, 25 minutes, 6, 30 minutes, 7, 35 minutes, 8, 40 minutes, and 9, 45 minutes. So, with a minute hand on 9, how many minutes do you think it is? 45 minutes. That's right. So, the time should be 8:45. We can say that the time is 8:45 on a digital clock. This means we are 45 minutes past 8. Or we can say that it is 8:45. Or we are 15 minutes away from 9. Good job. In the next example, where do you think the hour hand is pointing to? It is pointing to 10, isn't it? And where is the minute hand pointing to? The minute hand is pointing to 12. Now, hope you remember the rule that whenever the minute hand points to 12, we say o'clock. With the minute hand pointing to 12, we check which number is the hour hand pointing to. So, with the hour hand on 10, we say 10 o'clock, isn't it? That means 10:00 on a digital clock. That's right. Let's check one last example. Where do you think the hour hand is pointing to? It is close to 5. But hasn't yet reached 5. In fact, it has moved further away from 4. And where is the minute hand pointing to? The minute hand is pointing to 11. Hope you remember the rule that to count time, we count by 5 for the numbers 1 to 12. So, when the minute hand is on 1, it corresponds to 5 minutes. When the minute hand is on 2, it corresponds to 10 minutes. 3, 15 minutes, 4, 20 minutes, 5, 25 minutes, 6, 30 minutes, 7, 35 minutes, 8, 40 minutes, 9, 45 minutes, 10, 50 minutes, and 11, 55 minutes. So, with the minute hand on 11, how many minutes do you think it is? 55 minutes. That's right. So, the time is 4:55. This means we are 55 minutes past 4. Or we can also say that we are 5 minutes away from 5. This means that on a digital clock, the time is 4:55. You did it. Good job. Thanks for watching.